And welcome to our February 2019 edition of Sports Highlights, our anniversary month, which started in February of 1992. This is Sports Highlights on our beautiful set right here, airing on Mondays at 7 a.m., 2 p.m., and 7 p.m. on Cox Cable 47 517, weekends on nnpstv.com, and of course at 9 a.m. It's a pleasure to interview Eugene Marshall Jr. to start things off, the Director of Athletics at Hampton University. How are you?
Good. Well, thanks for having me on the show.
Very nice. You've been there for several years now. Tell us about your background.
Well, I've kind of been in the Northeast quite a bit. This is my 34th year in intercollegiate athletics. I spent 19 years as a basketball coach, coached men at Pratt Institute for 11 years, coached women at the College of Staten Island, and also Ramapo College for a total of 8 years. Athletic director at Pratt Institute for 8 years, and moved on to Staten Island where I was the AD and coach, just like at Pratt, for another 2 years, and then spent 6 of the 7 years at Ramapo as the head basketball coach. Moved on to West Point as a deputy athletic director, then went back to Ramapo because the unfortunate passing of a mentee who turned out to be the AD after I left, and then went on to Iona, and then went to Queens College, and then decided to come down here.
You know, it's something you probably know this firsthand. When you're coaching, you're in your bubble, but when you're in administration, you're in everybody's bubble.
Everybody's bubble. The only time I had a chance to take a break was when I was coaching in the AD, because I could go and run practice. Nobody would bother me when I ran practice, or when I'm actually coaching during the game, nobody would stop and ask me to sign a purchase order or something like that.
Right, because when you're, let's say, at a football team and you're a general manager, it's kind of like being an AD at a school.
Exactly, yeah.
There's a lot involved with school. There's a lot more involved now, especially with recruiting and communication, compliance, and of course, academics and eligibility.
Well, one of the good things at those places when I did coach, I had a great staff of former head coaches as well as young people that would allow to go out and really recruit, so I could go out and recruit and really close the deal as opposed to trying to go out and beat the bushes. And then once I got full-time athletic director, not really coaching anymore, I could understand what coaches go through when it comes to recruiting, compliance, and paperwork, and all the things that go into being a good coach, the community outreach, meeting with donors, talking to sponsors, all the things that you don't like, because all you really want to do is get in the gym or on the field or the track and just coach. But the business now is going out and meeting with folks.
You got to be front and center. And we live in a society today, you know this, Eugene, where people rely so much on the phone and emails, we take away the transparency sometimes.
It does. And that's one of the things that our student athletes miss. And we try to stress upon them that they need to get away from that cell phone and talk. Communicate with people. We don't do that enough. Look somebody in the eye instead of looking down at your phone.
Right.
And that's one of the biggest problems that you have. You have people that are in dorms. They stay in the same room. They don't talk to one another. They text each other across the room.
Right. I think that's part of society. We're talking to Eugene Marshall Jr. He's the Director of Athletics at Hampton University, and Hampton's had a rich tradition in the past in the CIAA and the MEAC. How is it in the Big South?
It's been very good. We've been pretty competitive. It's a nice step. I think it's important that you continue to strive to do better, but you don't forget your past, and you continue to just embrace the past, but you got to forge ahead. Mm-hmm. It's just like everybody else going from grammar school to middle school to high school to college and getting a job and then trying to get promotions at the next place. You want to do the same thing with your athletic program and your institution.
There's so much involved in that institution as far as sports and men's and women's sports, and tell us how many total there are, but the travel alone, football I always say is almost like cake. you're 5 or 6 home games, 5 or 6 on the road. You know the travel way ahead of time, once every other week. But for basketball and the Olympic sports, they're constantly on the road.
They are, and I think, we have 18 sports now. We're going to have a 19th in the fall with triathlon. Women's triathlon is going to start. Football, once a week. Then you got track is once a week. Golf tournaments, really once a week. Tennis, maybe twice a week. Basketball is twice a week, but it's all over the place. The sport, and you'll be meeting with her shortly, is softball. They play 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week. Double headers, single games, all over the place. And so that's a lot of missed class time. That's a lot of making transportation and trying to work that they got to catch up on. But they do a great job. They have great students, great coaching staff, and they've done well. And they have the biggest jump by going to the Big South. You're looking at 23 spots from where the MEAC is currently to where the Big South is in power rating for softball. So they're really stepping it up a notch. Some of our other sports as well, when we looked at the move, had a lot to do with the RPI and the power rating, and in men's basketball, the metrics. Unfortunately, the MEAC is either next to the last or last. The Big South is a couple of steps up. So when you make it to the tournament, you now have a chance to get a better seed, which could help you to get to a second or third round game.
All right. I remember Norfolk State, of course, had a nice win a few years ago in the NCAA tournament, but the Big South's got a lot of stories like that.
Yes.
And y'all are now a part of that.
Exactly, and that helps. And when you look at trying to compete at a higher level, you want to compete. And this gives you an opportunity so that when you win the Big South and you go, you won't be a 16 or 15 seed. You could be a 12, 11, 13, or 14 seed, which means you'll get to play a 3, 4, or 5, which gives you a better shot to get to the next round.
Right. You talk about, as we're talking with Eugene Marshall, it's a privilege to talk to him today, the director of athletics at Hampton University, the Pirates. As far as your coaches, and when you have meetings about being super organized, I mean, you almost have to, you see Nick Saban at Alabama, he's never happy even if he wins a championship. That planning, the calendar, I mean, there's meals involved on the road, there's hotels involved, there's a lot of before and after, but I guess the key for you and everybody else is to be organized.
We have to be, and I think the coaches will probably say that I'm probably like Nick Saban. I'm never happy with what goes on. I'm always trying to plan and plot and try to make things better because, again, we are a multi-million-dollar operation, which major mission is to educate our student athletes. But also we want to put a good presence on because we're really the front porch of the university. People look at us through all types of different venues, social media, whether it's TV, whether it's the print. So if we look good, it makes the university look good. And so that's our goal. And part of that is being organized, having structure, making sure the students get good academic support when they're on the road, when they're here, make sure they get meals, make sure the transportation is acceptable to the Wi-Fi that they may have. You know, we make decisions on transportation based on that so the students can study when they're away.
And safety around campus.
And safety around, yes.
Yeah, you talk about that. You mentioned a great point about the front porch. Your school is one of the most visible schools off the interstate I've ever been to. I mean, it's right off the interstate. You see that big billboard there greeting you. So that first initial greeting is good for students as well that don't play sports.
Exactly. And then our president, Dr. William R. Harvey, has been here for 41 years, has set the standard of excellence. You know, we have 92 programs, new academic programs since he's been here, 18 new buildings. We have the Cancer Treatment Center. I mean, there's a lot going on at Hampton. So there's a lot for us to continue to keep the good name moving.
I remember when I was a kid at George Mason, my mother was honored to be National Teacher of the Year, and the person right there at the White House with her was Dr. Harvey. I mean, he is front and center visible for decades around the community.
Exactly, and so that is something that you keep in mind when you're trying to make your program go far, look well, and that you're doing the right things. I mean, I take great pride in the fact that our student athletes have a graduation rate of 79%, that we have 150 out of 350 Dean's List students, you know, that we not only win on the court, field, diamond, track, but we win in the classroom. We have a classroom on the road where we have academic people travel with our student athletes. those are the things that really, as our slogan says, we build leaders and champions, and that's what we try to do.
Right, because there's so much involved. I mean, the travel alone, like you said, you're going to a little bit different places
Yeah.
now. And, the academics, the athletics, the activities are all go hand in hand. But when you're traveling and it gets dark and it gets cold early and you need help with a math question or English, it's nice to have somebody you can lean on.
Exactly. And one good thing about it is our faculty at Hampton, from the provost, Dr. Joanne Haysberg, down to the instructors and the deans, are all in with helping our student athletes to do well in the classroom.
What are the biggest concerns in 2019 that you'd like to see addressed as far as athletics in general?
I would just like to see that people would understand that athletics is a business with the sole goal is to graduate, matriculate student athletes, but also understand that we have to mentor and develop these students, and that the outside world would stop filling these young people's heads with visions of grandeur. Everybody's not going to the pros. Everybody's not going to get a contract. And part of it is adults mooch off of student athletes for their own interest and not really the interest of the student athlete.
Right, and it works both ways too. You're exactly right, because here's what I always tell people in college and professional sports. March Madness ends right around early April. And then what do you see? The NBA playoffs in April, May, and June. I love the NBA.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I eat, drink, and sleep the NBA. But how many NBA players from Virginia or Maryland, North Carolina are there? Let's just say in general, it's
Right.
tough to make the NBA.
It is. And I look at it and saying, look, why not? And I was at other places where we had some great players that had tryouts. And one of the things I told them is that, hey, shoot for the NBA. But if you have a degree, you're playing with house money.
Right.
If you don't have a degree, then you're at their mercy. You can try out, and then you say, hey, I had enough. Go find a job. But if you don't have a degree, you have to take what they give you. And I think, we try to do a good job. I know our coaches try to stress that upon all our student athletes, but we can't control the outside forces, because people watch ESPN. They see all the highlight videos. They want their kid or their kid that they're the guardian for to be on that. Then they look at it and say, well, hey, they're going to make it to the pros somewhere. They may not. It doesn't mean that they're a failure.
Right.
And then the other thing is people understand about playing time. Playing time is about helping a team win, not about showcasing an individual. And I think we lose sight of that.
Yeah.
We get a lot of calls from parents saying, I want my kid to play. And I look at it at the expense of winning, at the expense of the team. And so I think that we have to get back to the team concept and not be so individualistic.
Right, especially the Division I level.
Yes.
Explain to the fans, Eugene, as far as the MEAC used to play in their own little bowl game at the end of the year with the SWAC, right? How does it work for the Big South as far as college football?
Well, the Big South plays in the FCS championships. If you win or you're in second place, if you have a higher seed, you'll get an automatic bid, just like basketball. And then you play the different rounds based on your seeding and how well you do. Mm-hmm. And so it's one and done. The MEAC came up with a very novel idea to play a bowl championship, which was great. But now the Big South has all the FCS schools in the country competing for an FCS championship.
Right, could be James Madison, could be William Mary, could be anybody.
Could be anybody.
Right, how difficult is scheduling? Any sport?
It's difficult at Hampton because we have a great tradition of winning and success. So a lot of teams don't want to play us because of the fact when we were in the MEAC, they didn't want to play us because if they lost to Hampton in the power rating, it was bad. And then if you lose to a MEAC school, it was worse, which wasn't fair to each school in the MEAC, nor the MEAC as well. So then going to the Big South, people still may not want to play us, but our power rating is a little bit higher. It's just tough because schools know that we have good programs.
Right, because Hampton's played Virginia and Carolina before, but it's tough to get them on the schedule on an annual basis.
Right, And we have to fit it into, now with our new conference, we have to fit it into their schedule. So we're still playing some of those schools. I know softball plays Virginia Tech. Basketball has played Virginia over the years, and we try to get those games in. Football was a little more challenging the past 2 years because we left the MEAC, and some of the MEAC schools didn't want to play us. But now I think we're back. We have a very good schedule that'll be coming out shortly.
Right.
And we have a good conference schedule. We have a good non-conference schedule. And we're going to play two CIAA schools. We're going to try to play Elizabeth City. We're going to play Virginia Union. And that gives us a chance to reconnect with our fan base and our old CIAA friends. Then we're going to Howard this year. We're going to play Howard. So, and then we play Liberty. So we have a chance to, yes, we're moving ahead to the Big South, but we haven't forgot our HBCU roots, and we haven't forgot our CIAA friends as well as our MEAC friends.
I got to ask you this question because it seems like starting in the fall, you start hearing about the tournaments. I'm talking about the conference tournaments. Right. The MEAC's got it all over their buses already. Is it too much pressure on these tournaments, whether it's the ACC or the Big South? Or, because a lot of times years ago, you remember, not everybody had a tournament.
Well, we now in the Big South, it's a higher seed. Eventually, we'd like to get a neutral site tournament. I think it's a lot of pressure because it's one bid, one league. And so now, no matter what you do, it's either win or go home. So that's where the pressure is. I think it's great that there's a lot of advertisement going on. It's great that the MEAC, and when we were in it the same way, put a lot of advertisement in to try to fill the seats. But the pressure is the best team may not necessarily go to the tournament.
Right.
It's the hot team at the right time.
Right. All right, Eugene Marshall, thank you for your time, your talent, and your treasure. I learned a lot today, and we look forward to make sure you follow Hampton, the Pirates, all over social media. Jim Heath does all that. Great job with Facebook, Twitter, and the websites. All the best to you and your team at Hampton University.
Thanks for having us.
All the teams.
Thank you.
All right, stay tuned for our next guest. It'll be Angela Nicholson, head softball coach at Hampton University.
Music and fine arts provide enriching experiences. They teach students that there can be more than one solution to a problem, more than one right answer, that mistakes are learning experiences, and present an opportunity to be creative and flexible. The arts encourage persistence and dedication. They require sustained concentration, personal reflection involving critical analysis, and self-adjustment to reach desired goals. These are essential 21st century skills. Skills recognized as important to productive career and citizen success. Each student deserves and benefits from an arts-rich education.
And welcome back to our February edition of Sports Highlights. Hope you enjoyed our first interview with Eugene Marshall Jr., the Director of Athletics at Hampton University. It's a pleasure now to talk to Angela Nicholson. I want to thank our good friends at Fazoli's, first from Chesapeake and Newport News. She's the head softball coach at Hampton. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us about your softball background.
I played at Cleveland State University in Ohio, and went to school to be a teacher, and that's what I thought I was going to do. And when I graduated, I started doing that, but I also wanted to coach. So thought I was going to be a high school coach, nothing more than that. And I applied for a position that opened up locally. It was a junior college position. And I actually was offered the job. And so I was teaching 7th grade and coaching at the junior college in the evenings. So that started my career. So I was a head coach right from the beginning, and I was there for 4 years, very successful 4 years there. And while I was teaching, I kind of found myself, instead of doing lesson plans and grading papers during my planning period, I was writing up lineups and practice plans and couldn't get softball off my mind. So that's when I kind of found out that I wanted to really be a full-time collegiate coach. So I applied for a couple of jobs and got my first full-time position at Ursuline College, which is an NAIA school. It was an all-girls Catholic school. I was there for a year, and I actually coached cross-country and softball. And we had a really, really successful year in 1 year. And so I wanted to move up to the Division I ranks and applied and got the job at Butler University in Indianapolis. And I was only there for a year, not intentionally, but my alma mater, Cleveland State, opened up. And I thought that might be my one and only opportunity to get in there. So I applied and got that job to move back home.
Yeah.
And I was at Cleveland State for 7 years and did really, really well there.
How was that being so close to home?
I loved it.
I bet, yeah.
Loved it because at the time I had 3 kids under the age of 5 when I was in Indianapolis, and it was crazy. And no family, nothing. It was just me and my husband, and it was really hard. So when we went back home, it was great because my husband's family and my family they live like 2 miles from each other. And Cleveland State was about 20 miles from where we lived.
Yeah.
So it was perfect
Right.
in every sense, every way. So I was there for 7 years, and I loved every minute of it, and loved to give back to my alma mater. It was fantastic. And then I moved on to in the OVC, the Ohio Valley Conference, at Eastern Illinois, and was there for 3 seasons. And that's when I came here.
Right, so a little bit change in the weather, although we do get cold weather here as well. Talking to Angela Nicholson, and as a mom first, and a coach, budgeting your time. You always hear women in general that work full time and have a kid or 2. It's very difficult. You've got 3, like you said, 4, and you travel a lot. So you think about the dynamic. That's not easy.
It is not easy, and when I first started, it was me and my husband actually. He wrestled Division I at Cleveland State, and so he gets it. He understands the life of an athlete, of a coach. So he gave up his career to stay at home with our kids, and he sacrificed quite a bit. He was my number 1 fan, number 1 supporter. It was amazing. I could not have done it without him. And he is now my assistant.
Okay.
So in the early years, he was there, wasn't on my staff per se, but he was there in every sense of the word. But he is now, my kids are older, so he's able, and he's finally on staff.
Well, let's talk about how many games you play in the spring and talk about your roster.
Yeah, so the NCAA allows 56 games. So
you play 56 games?
Yeah, from February till
Wow.
May, the beginning of May. Yeah, it's
Multitask.
It's unbelievable.
We were talking about preparation and being prepared with Eugene. I mean, you really have to budget your time.
Oh, yeah, and not only that, I mean, then you throw the weather in there. So although you may have thought you had a game today or this weekend, it may get moved to a different day. So it's a constant shuffle, and my calendar is color-coded in every single way. Because not only do I have my schedule, but yes, all 4 of my kids play almost every sport there is.
Right, and these girls that you're coaching, they're not, they're in their 20s, some are in their teens, so they got their own personal issues. I'm sure you're like the Dr. Phil of the team too, right?
No doubt. We have
Right.
to teach, time management and what to do, and really stress, freshmen especially, they don't get it. They have to understand, and we sit them down in January. We just sat them down and said, hey, listen, this is what you need to do. And we gave them their schedules, and we explained to them how to talk to the professors, highlight the days you're going to miss, plan it now. We're not going to plan it the day of or the day after. We got to do it now.
Like saving the date for a wedding almost.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, well, let's talk about all the hype you've had about this one young lady. Tell us her full name.
Monet Davis.
How did that all start?
Oh,
And how did she pick Hampton?
yeah. So it started with an email I got this fall Well, right at the end of summer, beginning of fall, I got this email from, and I get a million emails, but, and I do try to read every one of them, and I read it, and it was the name Monet Davis, and I'm thinking, it can't be the same Monet Davis that I knew from a couple of years ago, who's like this amazing baseball player.
Right.
And so I looked at it again, and I Googled it, and I searched, and I'm like, oh my God, it is. It's the same Monet Davis. And she was saying how she was interested in softball, and you know, she wanted to possibly play in college. And so I sent her an email, and I said, hey, we happen to be having a camp like 2 weeks later. And I said, you know, coming to camp would be perfect for, you know, me to see your skills, for me to work with you, for you to see campus, for you to meet the staff, for us just to kind of see if this is going to work or not. And next thing I know, 2 days later, she signed up for camp. So I'm like, okay, Monet Davis is coming to camp. It's perfect.
You went from maybe a spam email to all this,
Right,
right?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how it all began. She came to camp, and let me tell you, right away, the first time she touched the ball, I'm like, oh yeah, this is the real deal.
Right.
Very excited.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you. Leave us with a note real quick. What are you looking for in a student athlete?
We look for a lot of things, but I mean, the main thing, I guess, is overall athleticism and confidence and swag. Like, I need a kid with swag. I need a kid who knows what she's doing, knows what she wants, and gets after it.
Right, and sustains.
Yeah.
Because it's a long season, like
Absolutely.
you said. All right, well, Angela, thank you for your time and your talent and your treasure, a wealth of experience you've had in softball in a lot of different states, and we look forward to seeing your team this spring.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Angela Nicholson right there, a very successful head softball coach at Hampton. Also want to thank Eugene Marshall Jr. as well, the Director of Athletics at Hampton University as well, for being on our February edition 2019 of Sports Highlights. Thank you to Frizzolis. Thank you to Jim Heath as well. So for Ray Price, the entire crew, I'm Greg Bicaveras. For more, log on to nnpstv.com, and we'll talk to you soon.